Imagine crashing alone on a forgotten moon, only to find a wounded alien cub hiding in the wreckage. But this isn't just any creature. It's intelligent, powerful, and being hunted across the stars. When a reclusive human chooses to save her, their bond awakens something ancient, something forbidden. Now, hunted by enemies from orbit, they must defy empires, rewrite history, and fight for a future no one believed possible. This is not just survival. This is the beginning of a revolution. If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's move toward this wonderful story. The red twilight of Telvor 9 hung over the hills like dying embers, quiet and heavy. Birds had long fallen silent, and the trees stood frozen in the windless dusk. Rayan sat at the edge of his makeshift cabin, tools scattered on the bench beside him, a half-built solar lantern in his lap. The silence was peaceful, familiar. It was the kind of silence he had chosen when he came to this backwater moon 5 years ago, running from a life filled with commands, failures, and regrets. He was just beginning to doze off when the sky cracked open. A streak of fire carved across the upper atmosphere, glowing gold against the dimming sky. It wasn't fast, like a meteorite. It moved with purpose, angling sharply before vanishing behind the distant ridge. The tremor came seconds later, a deep thud that rippled through the ground and knocked over a canister on his porch. Rayan stood, eyes locked on the smoke rising in the distance. He didn't speak, didn't panic. He simply moved. Grabbing his pack, a flashlight, and the long-barreled rifle he hadn't used in months, he set out toward the ridge. Instinct guided his feet, the same instincts that once helped him survive jungles on 3 different planets. As he moved through the undergrowth, his breath synchronized with the quiet crunch of moss and fern beneath his boots. It took him 20 minutes to reach the crash site. What he saw there made his heart skip. Nestled in a shallow crater half buried in rock and soil, was a sleek black craft no bigger than a delivery shuttle. Its design was strange, smooth, like melted glass, with glowing silver veins tracing over its surface. It pulsed gently, almost like it was breathing. A sharp crack ran along one side, smoke leaking from the broken panel. No insignia, no signal lights. Nothing human. Rayan circled it slowly, rifle at the ready. This was no patrol ship. It was too elegant, too alien. When he finally peered inside through the cracked hatch, he smelled burnt metal and something else. Something like singed fur. "Hello?" His voice was calm, quiet. No reply. He lowered his rifle and slipped inside. The air was stale and warm. Walls lined with strange shapes flickered faintly with alien script. Most of the interior had melted into itself, but there was space to move. As he reached the back, he heard it. Breathing. Shallow. Raspy. Followed by a low, warning growl. He flicked his flashlight on and froze. Curled in a dented cargo hold was a creature unlike anything he had seen in 20 years of fieldwork, about the size of a mountain cat. Its fur shimmered in muted teal and black, striped like ripples in water. Its limbs were tucked beneath its body, one clearly broken, and its side bore a fresh gash oozing golden fluid. Its eyes met his. Bright, intelligent, filled with pain and fear. "Easy," Rayan whispered, lowering his flashlight and kneeling. "I'm not here to hurt you." The creature growled again, softer this time. It bared sharp teeth but made no move to attack. It was too weak, too hurt. Its breath wheezed in and out, labored and uneven. He scanned the room. No pilot, no cargo. Just this creature. A survivor. Rayan's mind raced. Protocol said he should call it in, send coordinates to the outpost. But protocol belonged to a man he no longer was. If he reported this, the creature would vanish into some lab, dissected and drained for knowledge. He had seen it happen. Once. That was enough. He reached into his pack and pulled out a compact med kit. "You're lucky," he murmured, half to himself. "I've had experience patching up nastier things than you," he spoke softly, steadily, as he wrapped his old jacket around his arm and inched forward. The creature flinched but didn't strike. Instead, it sniffed the air, head trembling. As he reached for the leg, he felt something strange, like a feather brushing against the inside of his skull. A pressure, then an image. For the briefest moment, his mind was filled with a vision. A hall of silver pillars, a towering figure, with glowing eyes, and the creature curled at her feet like a loyal companion. Then it vanished, just a flash. Rayan gasped and looked down. The creature's eyes were still locked on his. A deep golden glow pulsed in their depths. "You're not just some wild thing, are you?" he said, barely above a whisper. It blinked once, slow. Then lowered its head. With careful hands, Rain cleaned the wound, bound the leg, and gently lifted the creature from the wreckage. It was heavier than it looked, all lean muscle beneath soft fur. As he stepped out into the darkening forest, he paused. The ship still pulsed faintly, like a dying heartbeat. He reached into his belt and pulled a small incendiary charge, one of the last relics of his former life. He placed it inside the cracked hull and stepped back. Moments later, as he disappeared into the trees with the creature cradled in his arms, a pillar of flame rose behind them, lighting the sky like a second sunset. He didn't look back. By the time he returned to his cabin, the creature was unconscious, breathing steady and slow. He laid it on a soft blanket near the fire, checking the bandage once more before finally sitting down across from it. He watched the rise and fall of its side, the way its ears twitched in sleep, and the faint shimmer of its fur under the flickering firelight. Rayan knew something in his life had shifted. This wasn't just a rescue. This was a turning point. The loneliness that had once comforted him now felt too quiet. And the silence of the forest no longer seemed empty. It seemed expectant, like it was holding its breath. Outside, the wind stirred the trees. Inside, Rayan closed his eyes and drifted into uneasy sleep. His dreams filled with echoes of glowing eyes, stars that whispered secrets, and the strange sensation of not being alone anymore. The morning light on Telvor 9 was always slow to rise, creeping through the forest like a secret trying not to be found. Rayan woke before the sun fully crested the eastern ridge. The air was cool and filled with the scent of wet leaves and distant fires. Inside the cabin, the creature still slept, curled on a worn blanket beside the hearth. Its breathing was even, no longer strained, and its wounded leg had stopped trembling. Rayan poured water into a pot and set it over the coals. As steam began to rise, he glanced at the creature. No, not just a creature. Something more. Something aware. The visions from the night before still haunted him. The silver hall. The tall figure. The sense that this small being had once stood beside greatness. It was impossible, but it felt true. And the image hadn't come from his mind. It had come from hers. When the creature stirred, she opened her eyes slowly. Golden light flickered in them like embers, watchful and tired. Rayan moved carefully, placing a shallow bowl of water near her head. She didn't drink right away, only sniffed, then looked at him again with what felt like curiosity. "I don't know what you are," Rayan said softly, kneeling nearby. "But you're not alone anymore." She blinked, not in fear or threat, just slow understanding. The day passed. Quietly, Rain worked on reinforcing the cabin walls and checking the perimeter alarms he'd buried years ago. He had never expected to need them again, but now things had changed. Every so often, he returned to check on her. She still didn't move much, but watched everything, his hands, his steps, even the way he poured water or tightened screws. By the second night, she had taken food from his hand. Raw meat carefully cut, placed in an old metal pan. She sniffed it, then pulled it toward herself with a paw, eating slowly as if testing the taste. When she finished, she sat quietly by the fire, her eyes on the flickering flames. Rayan was sharpening a small blade when he felt it again. The touch in his mind, not a word or voice, but a presence, gentle, curious. It brushed against him, then pulled away. He froze, then looked across the room. Her gaze was on him again, and something in her eyes shimmered with recognition. "You're trying to speak," he whispered. "Aren't you?" She blinked once, then turned her head slightly as if listening to something far away. Then the connection returned. Not words, but emotion, safety, trust, and something else. Not directed at him, but drawn from him. A question. Why alone? Rand swallowed hard. "I was a trainer, wildlife unit, specialized in semi-sentient predator bonding. But we pushed too far, tried to enhance control with implants. One day, it failed. 3 of my team died. I walked away." He wasn't sure why he said it aloud. Maybe because he felt her listening. The bond between them didn't feel like control or command. It felt like a doorway that only opened when both sides wanted it to, and tonight it opened wider. In his sleep, Rand dreamed again. Not his own dreams, but shared ones. He ran across a stone path under strange stars, his body low and sleek. He felt the weight of his muscles, the cold of the wind through fur. He saw the world through her eyes, trees glowing with silver sap, skies filled with 3 moons, and other creatures tall and elegant walking beside her. He woke just before dawn, heart pounding. Across the room she stirred too. Their eyes met again. No growl, no warning. Just knowing. "What are you?" he asked, not expecting an answer but needing to speak it. She stretched slowly and stood, her injured leg no longer dragged. The bandage was still there, but she walked with more strength now. She stepped closer, her paws silent on the wooden floor. When she stopped beside him, she sat and for the first time gently placed one paw on his hand. The touch was warm and light, but the mental rush it triggered was overwhelming. Images flooded his thoughts. A great city of crystal towers. A throne, shaped from living vines. Her people, the Lumari, graceful and powerful, protectors of a fragile peace across stars. And her, still young, but destined to bond with a ruler, a guardian, until something went wrong. An attack, betrayal, her escape. The crash. Rand gasped, tears unbidden in his eyes. The link faded and the weight of it left him breathless. "You're not just lost," he whispered. "You were hunted." She didn't respond in words, but her gaze confirmed it. The bond between them was no longer a spark. It had become a current flowing between 2 souls. Later that day, as Rand adjusted the cabin sensors, the console beeped. A red alert. An incoming signal. Patrol drone. Colonial Authority. Standard flyover. Supposed to check for mining compliance and biological activity. He swore under his breath and rushed back inside. "We have to hide you," he said, already clearing space beneath the floorboards. He pulled out an old panel, revealing a crawl space lined with survival rations and gear. She followed without protest, as if she understood. He helped her down gently and covered the opening just as the whine of the drone's engine swept over the treetops. 10 minutes passed. The drone scanned, paused briefly near the homestead, then moved on. Standard procedure. No inspection team. Not yet. Rand waited until the sound faded before pulling back the hatch. She crawled out, blinking at the light but not frightened. Only alert, always alert. "That was close," he said. She sat again watching him. Then the touch came again, stronger this time. "Bond growing," she projected. He nodded slowly. "Yeah, I feel it." More than words passed between them now. Shared feelings, impressions, echoes of each other's memories. When night came, he didn't sleep immediately. Instead, he sat beside her, not as a caretaker, but as something else, something closer. "I should call you something," he said, half laughing. "Can't just keep calling you, hey you." He paused, thinking. Then, almost without effort, the name formed in his mind. Not from him, but from her. "Sira," he said softly. "Is that right?" Her ears twitched at the sound. She lowered, her head in acknowledgement. "Sira." The name fit like a missing piece. Rand leaned back and closed his eyes. And this time, when sleep took him, it did not feel lonely. Not at all. The wind over Telver 9 shifted on the fourth morning. Rayan noticed it before he even opened his eyes. It was subtle, quieter, colder, a weight in the air that didn't belong. He sat up on the edge of his bed, listening. In the corner of the room, Sira lay curled beneath a faded blanket. Her breathing was slow but restless, ears twitching. She was dreaming again. Rain stood and moved to the window. The forest beyond the clearing looked the same, but he had learned not to trust appearances. Something was wrong. The animals were too still. No birdsong, no rustling, only the occasional creak of old branches in the wind. He stepped outside, rifle slung over his shoulder, boots sinking slightly into the soft ground. He scanned the treetops, the sky, then checked the motion, sensors hidden near the edge of the clearing. One of them was blinking, a soft blue pulse. Not a false alarm. It had picked up something. He turned back toward the cabin, his gut tight with warning. Inside, Sira was already awake. Her golden eyes met his the moment he stepped through the door. She was alert, ears forward, body tense. "You felt it too," Rain said. Sira's reply was not spoken aloud, but it echoed clearly in his mind. Not alone anymore. Who? She paused, then projected a faint image. Shadowy figures stepping from a sleek ship. Tall, armored, masked, not Lumari, not human. "They search for me," she added. "They come with silence." Rayan nodded, already moving. He grabbed his gear, packed, quickly, and handed Sira a small satchel with field rations. She took it with her teeth and slung it over her shoulder like she'd done it a dozen times. "We hide, then we plan," he said. "No," she replied. "We face them." He looked at her, surprised. "They'll be armed. I am not weak anymore." Her form shimmered slightly, as it had been doing more often. Her body had grown leaner, stronger. Her injuries were almost completely healed. Her senses were sharper now, and so was her presence in his thoughts. The bond between them was no longer just a link, it was a current, flowing steadily between them. They moved together through the forest, silent as the mist. Rayan led them to a rocky outcropping a mile from the cabin, a place he used to use as a lookout. From there they could see the landing zone. It was worse than he expected. A small black ship, oval and quiet, had touched down in a narrow clearing. Its surface rippled like liquid and no insignia marked its hull. 3 figures emerged from its side, 2 tall, clad in smooth black armor with dull orange visors. The third was smaller, floating just above the ground. A drone, its surface shifting with scanning waves. Sira growled softly. Not bounty hunters she sent, but worse. Silence. Bonded. Mindless, but dangerous. Do they know where we are? Not yet. Rayan reached into his pack and pulled out a long-range scope. He steadied it on the edge of the rock and zoomed in on the figures. They moved with military precision, scanning the trees with triangular devices. They were tracking something. Us, he muttered. Or more likely you. She didn't answer, but her tension deepened. They returned to the cabin under cover of trees. Rayan began activating traps he hadn't used in years, motion-triggered flares, flash mines, and sonic distorters. Old tech, but still effective. As the sun dipped low, the first signal reached them. One of the sensors tripped, then another. They're testing our defenses, Sira said. Then let's show them what we've got, Rayan replied. The first flash mine exploded with a pop of white light, followed by shouting in a language Rayan didn't recognize. Moments later, the drone zipped overhead, scanning in wide arcs. Rayan fired once, hitting it with an electric net. The drone crackled and spun out of control, vanishing into the trees. One down, he said. Movement came fast after that. The 2 armored hunters charged through the brush, weapons humming with energy. Rayan took cover behind a tree, waiting. When the first stepped into view, Sira pounced from the side. Her claws struck the armor with a burst of blue light, causing the hunter to stumble back. Rayan fired twice, One shot hit the chest plate, sparking. The second hit the knee joint. The hunter dropped. The second came from behind. Rand turned too, slow. But Syrah leapt between them, taking the blow. Energy scorched her side, but she barely flinched. She twisted, slammed her weight into the hunter's legs, and knocked him down. Rand moved quickly, tying the downed attacker's arms with synth cord. "We need answers," he said, breath heavy. "Who sent them?" Syrah pressed her paw to the side of the hunter's helmet. Her eyes flashed, and through their bond, Rand felt a surge of static. Then an image. A face. Female. Alien. Smooth features, dark eyes, a commander of sorts. Her voice echoed. "Find the escaped guardian, retrieve it. Kill the bonded." Rand sat back, stunned. "They're hunting us both." "Yes," Syrah replied. "The bond threatens them." Rand looked at her, his breath catching. "Why?" "Because it is proof. Humans can bond, and that changes everything." He understood then. The bond between guardian and bonded had never been meant for outsiders. It was sacred, reserved for Lumari rulers and chosen companions. If a human like him could form it naturally, it meant the bond wasn't exclusive. It meant other species could have it too. And some wanted to bury that truth. They stood in silence as the forest returned to quiet. The hunters were unconscious, bound, their weapons disabled. The ship in the clearing blinked with waiting lights, unaware of their failure. "What now?" Rand asked. "We send a message," Syrah said. "To who?" "To the ones who still believe in peace." She stepped toward the unconscious hunter and touched the helmet again. Her thoughts flowed into the device, imprinting what had happened. The battle, the bond, the truth. "They'll come for us," Rand said. "Yes," she replied, "but we won't run anymore." The wind shifted again. This time, it carried something new, hope. The stars above Telvor 9 shimmered like cold lanterns scattered across an endless sea. The forest below was quiet again, but the silence was different now. It was the stillness that came after movement, after choice. Rand stood on the edge of the ridge, watching the sky. Beside him, Syrah sat in her full form, no longer the wounded creature he had found in the wreck, but something powerful and ancient. Her eyes, still golden and sharp, seemed to see past the sky itself. A week had passed since the fight with the hunters. The ship that brought them remained grounded in the forest, now stripped of its weapons and stripped of its command codes. Syrah had used the ship's communication system to send a signal far beyond this world. It was more than a message. It was a declaration. The bond was real. The bond was shared. And a human had been chosen. The response came sooner than either of them expected. It wasn't words, but a presence. Syrah felt it first, a ripple in the mindscape that linked all bonded guardians. Someone important had heard, someone ancient. They were coming. Rand had prepared for many things in his life. Battles, storms, betrayal. But not this. Not the idea that he might stand before a council of beings older than any human nation. That he might be seen not as a mistake, but as a symbol of what could come. Next, they left the cabin at dawn. Syrah led the way through the forest, using paths that didn't exist before, carved into the ground by instinct and memory. Deep in the hills, beyond where the trees thinned and the stone outcroppings grew taller, they found it. A gate made of black metal and vines pulsing with silver light. Rand had seen alien structures in his old work, but nothing like this. It was alive. It breathed. And when Syrah placed her paw against it, it opened like a flower touched by sunlight. Inside was a chamber of stone and crystal. The walls shimmered with soft energy. The air hummed with something old, something sacred, and standing in the center was a figure cloaked in light and shadow. He was tall and thin, with silver markings on his skin, and a staff in his hand that pulsed with the same light as the walls. His eyes were the color of storms. When he spoke, his voice echoed not in sound but in thought. "Welcome, bonded." Syrah lowered her head. "Guardian Talaroon," she said, Rayan felt the presence of Talaroon enter his mind. It wasn't forceful, just curious, testing the shape of his thoughts, his memories, his choices. And then the voice came again. You are not like the others. Your bond was not forged in tradition but in trust. We didn't plan it, Rayan said. It just happened. And that, Talaroon replied, is why it matters. They sat together in the chamber for hours. Talaroon shared the history of the Lumari, the fall of the old bond traditions, the rise of fear. Long ago, a guardian bonded with a being from another world and the result had been peace. But others feared that bond and so they erased it from history. Now with Sira and Rayan, the truth had returned, but truth alone was not enough. They want proof, Sira said. Yes, Talaroon answered. And they want to test it. How? Rayan asked, with challenge. Not of strength, of choice. Outside the chamber, the stars moved. A ship descended from the sky, large and silent. It bore no weapons, no markings, only purpose. Talaroon led them to the landing field carved from stone. The ship opened, and from within stepped two more guardians. Their eyes were wary, their movements precise. Behind them walked a third figure, taller than the rest, wearing a cloak of shimmering blue. She was the Empress of the Lost Quadrant, a ruler not seen in years. Her presence filled the space without force. When her eyes met Rayan's, he felt the weight of centuries. You are the bonded one, she said without speaking. Rayan nodded. You carry her trust. And she carries mine, he said. The Empress looked to Sira. You defy the old ways. I follow what is right, Sira answered. The Empress stepped forward and extended her hand to Rayan. Show me. He hesitated, then reached out. The moment their hands touched, Sira linked with them both. The bond flared. Memories, emotions, thoughts all shared at once. The Empress saw the crash, the healing, the hunters. She saw how Rayan had chosen to help without asking for gain. How the bond had not been claimed but grown. When the vision ended, the Empress stepped back, her face unreadable. There are many who will not accept this, she said, but they cannot unsee it. Rayan said nothing. There was nothing more to prove. The Empress turned to Sira. Guardian, what do you choose? I choose him. And the bond we share. And you, human? I choose her, Rayan said. And whatever comes with it. The Empress nodded once. Then let it be known. The bond is renewed. And through it, our future may change. She returned to her ship, but Talaroon stayed. He placed a small stone in Rayan's hand, a smooth crystal with a soft glow. This will call me if you need me, he said. Rayan looked to Sira, and she met his gaze with quiet strength. They walked back through the forest as the sun began to set, the light golden and warm. They reached the cabin, but it no longer felt like a hiding place. It felt like a beginning. Days passed, then weeks, and more signals came, messages from others, some curious, some afraid, some angry, but all of them listening now. Rayan and Sarah began building something new, not just shelter, a place for those like them, those willing to bond, not through bloodlines or orders, but through choice. One evening, as the stars rose again, Rayan sat with Sira on the porch. Her head rested on his knee, and her eyes watched the sky. Do you think we're ready for what's coming? He asked. We are together, she said. He smiled. And somewhere beyond those forgotten stars, others were watching, listening. And maybe, just maybe, hoping too.